It's time to eat.
What are you hungry for?
Sit down and get ready to consume an abundance of fantasy football knowledge from Ross Tucker and Joe Dolan.
Feed me now. I'm starving.
On the Fantasy Feast Eatin' Podcast.
Yeah, let's eat, baby. It is the Fantasy Feast Eatin' Podcast, and it is, of course, presented by DraftKings. No more buys, and it is crunch time in fantasy football leagues, and always crunch time in DFS every single week. You can check me out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. We are at Ross Tucker Pod. All kinds of podcasts. Great going over O-line, D-line play, and the Defensive Player of the Year candidates with Brandon Thorne on today's Ross Tucker Football Podcast. We'll have Greg Cosell tomorrow. We had Emery Hunt on the College Draft Podcast yesterday. He's excellent. And, of course, Steve Fezzik on the Even Money Podcast. This is the Fantasy Feast Podcast, where we get you ready for fantasy football in all shapes and forms, thanks to the great Joe Dolan of fantasypoints.com, where you still can and should use the code 21Feast. You can also follow Joe at FG_Dolan. Joe, let's dive right into it because we got a lot of games to get to.
We do.
And we got a lot of information coming down. We record Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time, so obviously more stuff could happen later. But what we know right now is the Chiefs are playing the Chargers on Thursday night. It does not look like the Chiefs will have Chris Jones. It does not look like the Chargers will have Rashawn Slater, both of whom are on the COVID list, which will be a theme with today's show.
Oh, yeah, Ross. I'm excited for everything we say here to be irrelevant within 24 hours. That's just the way the news cycle's going. Apparently, there might be some changes to the protocols coming down today. So just keep in mind, we're recording this on Wednesday morning. So any updated information, reach out to me on Twitter at FG_Dolan. And we'll try to work through that as we see what happens if and when the protocols change, any more news comes out. Anyway, the Rashawn Slater, Chris Jones thing kind of seems like a little bit of a wash. The Chiefs' best pass rusher versus the Chargers' best tackle. And that is obviously a big situation. Now, the Chiefs have scored over 40 points in both of their games against the Raiders, and this is a phenomenal stat that Mike Clay from ESPN put out there. Of course, the Chiefs have scored 40 points in their two games against the Raiders. Meanwhile, only twice all season have the Chiefs faced two high safeties less than 40% of the time. Both games against the Raiders. What do the Chargers do as a base? Too high. Derwin James could play. Austin for the Chargers, which is good news. He's day to day, but the short week might prevent him from playing, which would be bad news for the Chargers. But I'm not just gonna be willing to say that, oh, the Chiefs passing game is fine. Keep in mind, they scored 4 touchdowns on the ground against the Raiders last week. So I think this could be a Clyde Edwards-Helaire game. I think Darrell Williams could be in play as a desperation flex if you need him. And then otherwise, Ross, you need to play Hill, Kelsey, and Mahomes. But we've just seen Hill and Kelsey over the last 2 games have combined for 12 catches over the last 2 games, including in a game in which the Chiefs scored 48 points. There's still something rotten in the state of Denmark, man.
What about for the Chargers on offense?
Well, let's see about Austin Eckler. It seemed to be a high ankle mechanism, according to our injury expert, Dr. Edwin Porras at Fantasy Points. And, he got taped up and they're saying, he could have gone back in. He wanted to go back in. I'm not convinced he's going to be 100%, but every indication looks like he's going to give it a go. Good news for the Chargers. Keenan Allen is off the COVID list. He is going to play in this game, which really increases the weaponry for Justin Herbert. I am playing my Chargers. Just keep in mind, though, that Chief defense, it's really improved since they traded for Melvin Ingram.
Yeah, it has. It's a good point. Let's get to Saturday's games. The Raiders are at the Browns, and the Browns have, I don't know, 14 guys on the COVID list the last couple of days.
Including Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski. Ross, I cannot say anything intelligent about the Cleveland Browns. Just can't do it. I mean, as it stands right now, if Case Keenum starts, he is going to turn around and he is going to hand the ball off to Nick Chubb a hell of a lot in this game. That's what's going to happen. Jarvis Landry's on the COVID list. Austin Hooper's on the COVID list. David Njoku might come off the COVID list, but we're not sure. Harrison Bryant could play this week. There is so much here that, like, even wasting time on it, we're just going to say something that is not right. And by the way, this isn't a great fantasy team anyway. So, I mean, punch is Pilate, man. I wash my hands of the Cleveland Browns.
What about Raiders?
Oh, I wish I could wash my hands of the Raiders. I mean, this team is in a world of hurt right now. It was so blatantly obvious at the beginning of that game that Hunter Renfrow was going to catch double-digit passes because it was the only thing working for the Raiders in that game. And look, Darren Waller did not practice on Tuesday. There is no indication Darren Waller is going to be back. In the 4 games Darren Waller has missed or left early, Hunter Renfrow has caught 7, 8, 9, and 13 passes. He has led the team in targets in all 4 of those games and is averaging 10.3 targets per game in games without Darren Waller. You start Hunter Renfrow as a top 12 fantasy. We had him at 12 at fantasy points last week, which might sound ridiculous, but it wasn't high enough. Hunter Renfrow is a stud. You got to start him. Josh Jacobs, you probably have to start him. They pulled him late in that game against the Chiefs, probably. Because, I mean, he lost a fumble, and I mean, that entire team was bad, but you probably have to start him anyway. Jalen Richard is going to come off the COVID list. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets involved. But right now, this team, it's really Hunter Renfrow or Josh Jacobs for me. Foster Moreau, by the way, has been awful in the two most recent games without Darren Waller.
Moving on to Saturday night. It is the Colts hosting the Patriots, Joe.
And both teams are coming off a bye, and this game is going to be utterly fascinating because the Patriots got now your entire focus with Bill Belichick. The real simple narrative with Belichick is, okay, he's going to try to take out their best player. Okay, it just feels like that's easier for Belichick to do when that best player is a wide receiver or a tight end. The Patriots, keep in mind, a couple of weeks ago, they gave up 270 yards rushing to the Tennessee Titans. So I think the Colts are going to come out here and try to do what has been successful for them all along, which is give Jonathan Taylor the football. Now, Jonathan Taylor, I mean, look, let's be honest here. Like, you're not sitting Jonathan Taylor, but I know Belichick is probably going to sit back and say, I want Carson Wentz to beat us. And if Carson Wentz beats us, then he beats us. But in the 4 of the Colts' last 5 victories, 4 of their last 5 wins, Carson Wentz has thrown for under 200 yards. In the other game, he faced the New York Jets, who, if you saw Gardner Minshew last time out against the Jets, he could have done his taxes in the pocket. So, I mean, you're looking at a matchup here where, you know, Carson Wentz has clearly not been the engine that makes this offense go when the Colts are winning football games. He has thrown for under 200 yards in 4 of their last 5 victories. I think Belichick's going to want to say, I want Carson Wentz to beat us. And, you know, maybe that increases the usage for Michael Pittman, but I'd be a little scared about that because I think Belichick also understands that Michael Pittman, if Carson Wentz beats the Patriots, is going to be a huge factor. This is a fascinating game from that side of the ball because I think the Colts have no choice but to do what they do well. And I think Belichick is going to say, I want Wentz to be the guy who has to beat us.
On the other side, Joe, I actually expect there to be a decent amount of play action pass from Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones has a big day.
Oh, interesting.
I'll tell you why I say that. Because I see Bobby Okereke saying, we got to stop the run. We got to come downhill and make them have to throw. We got to. Belichick reads that. He knows what they're going to do. And this is why when you're in New England, you're not allowed to make comments like that.
So,
because that's a schematic advantage.
I love that, Ross, because now the run game here for the Patriots has obviously been great. Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson are both kind of touchdown dependent RB2s right now. Obviously, keep an eye on Damian Harris because he got hurt in that last game. If he doesn't go, Ramondre Stevenson's probably in the RB1 tier. But that might be a really good point you make because, maybe get some downfield throwing. And the Colts have been susceptible to the pass at times this year. Kendrick Bourne has been kind of the guy who's emerged. You've got Jacoby Myers in the slot, Nelson Aguilar. Now, Myers is a guy, if you want him as like a wide receiver 3, you want him to catch 5 or 6 passes, and he hasn't really done that of late. Bourne and Aguilar are kind of the big play receivers, and you're hoping for a big play or a touchdown. And then I think with the play action passing that you mentioned, Ross, I think that could be a good news for Hunter Henry. And Hunter Henry, obviously, the Patriots threw 3 passes in their last game. You can't really look at that and say, oh, that's what they're going to do going forward. No, but Hunter Henry, I think, is a good beneficiary of the play-action strategy that you're talking about. Wouldn't be surprised to see Hunter Henry have a touchdown in this game.
Okay. Before we get to the Cowboys and the Giants, I need to tell you how much I love convenience. Joe, the other day, driving home, ordered Chick-fil-A on my app, got there, picked it up. Absolutely
What's your Chick-fil-A order, Ross?
You know what? I got 12-pack nuggets and a sandwich and a cookies and cream milkshake. Mm-hmm. I did not get fries because that's all my daughters like, so I get them large fries and sneak a couple of theirs.
I see. All right.
Perfect. Anyway,
I love the chicken sandwich, man.
It's incredible. Speaking of that, by the way, AutoZone. You can order something online and pick it up same day, store pickup. Or if you don't feel like leaving your house, like a lot of people don't, you can order it online at AutoZone.com, free next day delivery. You can even order as late as 10 p.m. and your package will arrive the next day. So next time you're starting a job, start it by shopping your way at AutoZone.com with their free same-day pickup, free next-day delivery. Get in the zone, AutoZone. Joe, it looks as if Mike Glennon will start again against the Cowboys with Daniel Jones having what I believe is a worrisome neck issue.
Yeah, and he still hasn't been cleared for contact. And at this point, they're 4-9. I wonder if Daniel Jones is going to get shut down for the season here. And look, it's not good news for the Giant offense. We have Joe Judge, I think, come out and say, don't be surprised if there was a report, rather. I don't know if Joe Judge said it, but there was a report that they could get a look at Jake Fromm in this game. So, the Giants' passing game has been terrible. Kadarius Toney, this guy had the world's worst quad injury, and then the poor guy lands on the COVID list. So it doesn't look like he's going to play this week. It's been a disaster for this passing game. Kenny Golladay, since returning from injury in week 9, is averaging 28.4 receiving yards per game. He's useless for fantasy. Kyle Rudolph, 60-yard play was the longest of his career. He led them in receiving, nearly doubled up everybody else. Ross, one thing I'd like to see the Giants do, how about that route Saquon Barkley ran when he scored the touchdown?
Yes. Sweet.
That was sickening. I would like to see them just kind of put him in the slot, split him out more, because you know what Saquon Barkley's strategy is and what his style is. And you know that, he's obviously not blameless here for his overall down season. But, man, it just seems like a waste of so much of the Giants' offensive attack when they hand him the ball 15 times up the middle and the offensive line's getting no push. And you know what Saquon's going to do. He's going to try to bounce to make a play, and he's going to lose yards. And every now and again, he'll bounce one. I actually thought he looked pretty good this past week, but I would like to see them split him out and out wide more, get him in space, because it is very clear that he is still very dangerous there. Otherwise, this team is a disaster for fantasy purposes. You know, if you are desperate for a flex, desperate, you can put Devontae Booker in there. And I hate to say it, but he had 12 touches. Saquon Barkley played just 55% of the snaps in the last game. By the way, John Ross also tested positive for COVID. So it looks like they're going to be even further decimated at the wide receiver position for Mike Glennon and Jake Fromm.
What about Cowboys, Joe? Dak Prescott's not playing real good.
Nah, he's not. And you wonder if he's healthy at this point. Since returning from injury in Week 9, Prescott has completed 63.2% of his throws for 6.6 yards per attempt and an 82.2 passer rating. In weeks 1 through 6, before he got injured and before the bye, he was completing 73.2% of his passes for 8.4 yards per attempt and a 115 passer rating. That is literally the difference between an elite quarterback and a below average one. That's what that is right now. And Prescott, maybe the calf is affecting him. He sailed the one interception. The one was just a terrible decision. I honestly totally forgot this is how long the season is and how long these last few weeks have been. He was dealing with a shoulder injury in the preseason. I wonder if that's creeping up because his throws do not look like they have a lot of juice on them at this point, some of his throws. So he's not playing great. So he's more of a low-end quarterback one. Ezekiel Elliott, let's listen to Jerry Jones say Ezekiel Elliott's totally healthy. He split carries with Corey Clement last week, okay? Tony Pollard didn't even play, and he split carries with Corey Clement. I mean, come on, man. Come on. He's not healthy. Tony Pollard's apparently going to play this week. He's going to be playing through pain. I think Zeke and Pollard, Zeke's a low-end RB2, and I think Pollard's a flex play.
Houston is at Jacksonville in a showdown, a battle of 2-11 teams.
Ross, I am not going to make a long-term declaration here, but of the top 5 games played by a rookie quarterback not named Mac Jones, how many belong to Davis Mills? Because he's had a couple pretty damn good games.
Probably.
The only 2 quarterbacks who have thrown for 300 yards this year on the Patriots were pre-injury Dak Prescott and Davis Mills. Those are the only 2. I'm not making a long-term declaration there, but I think that's pretty impressive given how awful this roster is. Brandon Cooks is averaging 14.4 fantasy points per game in Davis Mills starts and just 11.7 in fantasy points per game when Davis Mills doesn't start. Brandon Cooks, in his 3 games with the Jaguars as a Texan, 8 for 161 and a touchdown, 3 for 83 and a touchdown, 5 for 132 and a touchdown. If you're looking for somebody to start against the Jacksonville Jaguars, it's Brandon Cooks. And if you are dying for a tight end, Brevin Jordan, rookie tight end, has gotten in the box in 2 straight games.
He has. What about for the Jags? I mean, we don't need to get in the whole thing. They're a disaster. Everybody knows it.
They're a disaster. Their best fantasy options are Laquan Treadwell and James O'Shaughnessy. He's a good lad, but he's on a terrible team. That's it. I mean, I'm benching James. James Robinson actually played 68% of the snaps and had 4 yards from scrimmage. This team stinks.
Yikes. Tennessee is at Pittsburgh. What do you got in this one? Let's start with Tennessee, where I think I saw like 13 guys got the ball. Nobody had 50 yards. I mean, is there anybody you can play for Tennessee?
Yeah, so first and foremost, let's throw some props out for Mike Vrabel, who I think every now and again makes some in-game decisions that make Titan fans scratch their head. And look, they beat the Jaguars, but look at what Ryan Tannehill is working with. Their leading receiver was Jeff Swaim. And they're out there and just moving the ball and just not turning the ball over. They averaged 3.8 yards per play, okay? They weren't good on offense, but Vrabel's held this thing together. They still have effectively a 3-game lead in the division over the Colts because they beat them twice. I mean, this is really an impressive job by Vrabel. Now, the guy who I think you might play is Deontay Foreman, who looks good in the backfield. Jeremy McNichols and Dontrell Hilliard kind of split snaps as like the passing down back. Neither one caught a pass. McNichols played late, but I wonder if they were just getting him back from the concussion. So that's a situation that's a little worrisome to me. The other guy who's interesting is Julio Jones, okay? Because Julio Jones in that game He played on under 50% of the snaps in his return from a hamstring injury, and that was obviously by design. He wasn't playing in hurry up situations. He was just basically a part-time player for them, but I think that was by design. Why was that by design? Because they don't want him to get hurt again. I think their entire focus is on having people healthy for the playoffs, getting Julio in there, getting AJ Brown back, potentially getting Derrick Henry back. He ran around on 23 of Ryan Tannehill's 38 dropbacks. That was actually second on the team behind Nick Westbrook-Akina. And he was targeted 6 times on his 23 routes. So he's getting targeted on like basically 30% of the routes that he ran. If his snaps go up, and they probably will, maybe slightly, he's in the mix as a wide receiver 3 because when he was out there, Tannehill looked for him.
What about Pittsburgh, Joe? They got some guys that have been putting up decent numbers.
I got to be honest, Ross. I mean, I actually think Ben is playing all right. I really do. I mean, like, and look, we're grading him on a curve. Like, he's not the Ben of 2008 here, but he's doing all right. And from fantasy perspective, all I can ask for is that he's getting the ball in the hands of the guys who matter, and he is. Chase Claypool had 8 catches. Deontay Johnson had 5 catches. Najee Harris had 23 touches and 2 touchdowns. He looks like a grinder right now, maybe because he's gotten so many damn touches this year, but he's still getting the ball. Pat Freiermuth scored a touchdown. At this point, Freiermuth's an every week starter. At this point, Najee Harris is in your lineup. I think Deontay Johnson has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that he's a wide receiver 1 for fantasy. And Chase Claypool is a volatile but upside-oriented wide receiver 3, so long as he gets his head out of his you-know-what.
The Jets are at the Dolphins. Dolphins coming off of a bye, Joe. Still no Will Fuller. I mean, has he played in a game the whole year?
He did. He played, I think he played 1 game. He had a ton of air yards in that game. And has done, he played 2 games. He had a game against the Raiders and a game against the Colts. Then he has the finger injury, and he hasn't played. This, though, is looking indeed like Miami is going to have to throw the football in this game. Because their entire running back room is either on COVID or on IR. Currently, Malcolm Brown is still on IR. Patrick Laird is on IR. Myles Gaskin, Salvon Ahmed, and Phillip Lindsay are all on the COVID list. But Malcolm Brown's returning to practice. There's a tidbit for you. He and Duke Johnson could be splitting this backfield, but I think Malcolm Brown would be the lead guy. But I think this is going to be a Tua game. And Tua has averaged 18.3 fantasy points per game, which is quarterback 12 in his full games this year. He's been kind of a value. The Jets have been an awful team in coverage. We just mentioned, Gardner Minshew tore him up a couple of weeks ago. Carson Wentz tore him up a few weeks ago. Per Pro Football Focus, they're the 3rd worst graded coverage unit in the NFL. Tua has averaged 21.9 fantasy points per game in the games that he's thrown 40 or more passes. Again, you're looking at a team with that, would probably run the ball as an 8.5-point favorite here, but they might not have that option given the state of the running back position, which obviously is good news for Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki, by the way.
What about Joe for the Jets?
They're expecting to get Michael Carter, the running back this week. Tevin Coleman will be back from a concussion as well, which is probably good news for the run game. I think Michael Carter, you can probably fire up as a low-end RB2 if he plays this week. He was really coming into his own before he went down with that high ankle sprain. So that's a guy to keep an eye on. And then I actually think this is a good spot for Jamison Crowder. The Dolphins have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points per game, the most targets, and the 4th most yards per game out of the slot this season. So they're a slot funnel defense. I think Jamison Crowder is a wide receiver 3, and if you're dying, Braxton Berrios will be somebody that I think Zach Wilson will look to this week with Elijah Moore, obviously on IR.
Overcoming the odds, rewriting the playbook, delivering under pressure. The MVPs of small business lead their teams to victory all year long. Visa is proud to provide playmakers everywhere with more tools to help grow their business and help them achieve even greater success. Because the more people we can empower, the more we all win. Visa, a network working for everyone. Joe, it's Washington, it's Philadelphia. I think there's like 7, maybe O linemen or D linemen for Washington on the COVID list. I would imagine that we will see a lot of the Eagles rushing attack.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we'll see about Miles Sanders. We'll see about Jordan Howard. And keep in mind, this is Wednesday. This is before Wednesday morning before the Eagles practice. We still are not 100% sure about Jalen Hurts' status, So let's keep that in mind. But either way, with Washington, the entire defensive line on the COVID list, the Eagles are going to run the ball. We know the Eagles are going to run the ball. And I think with the way Taylor Heineke has played of late, the Eagles think this game's probably, at the very least, going to be close. So I think we're going to see the Eagles pound the ball down the throats of the Washington football team. Just keep an eye on the status of those Eagles. Don't know about Sanders. Don't know about Jordan Howard. Could be Boston Scott, who had an illness and was basically an emergency back last time out. Could be Kenny Gainwell, who had a nice game. Just keep an eye on the status of those Eagles. And then you have Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, who are their only 2 viable targets. But we have a lot of injuries for the Eagles that we still have to suss out, and we don't have information on that heading into this podcast. But obviously, Ross, if Jalen Hurts goes, this is a smash spot for Jalen Hurts with all those Washington football team defensive linemen on the COVID list.
What about for Washington on offense?
Oh, boy. Hospital ball Heineke was terrible in that game. I mean, he was so bad. Got Terry McLaurin hurt, so we don't know about him. Ricky Seals-Jones, I mean, he had 4 targets, but he caught just one of them. Cam Sims was their leading receiver. The Eagles are a terrible matchup for quarterbacks anyway because their corners have been playing out of their minds on the perimeter. If McLaurin Heineke looks anything like that and he doesn't have McLaurin, they are in big time trouble against this Eagle defense. Antonio Gibson fumbled again. So who knows if his role is going to be reduced here. They put in Jonathan Williams to score a touchdown last week. J.D. McKissick has missed 2 games with a concussion, so we have to check on his status. But there is a lot of questions about this game with injuries in particular that on Wednesday it's hard to suss out. But Cam Sims, Adam Humphries might be the top 2 receivers for Washington against Philadelphia. I will say this: Philadelphia has been a really good matchup for tight ends this year, so I'm willing to fire Ricky Seals-Jones back into my lineup.
Ooh, okay. A couple more here in episode 1 of the show that's so nice we do it twice. Arizona at Detroit.
Well, Arizona has a couple of injury issues that we need to watch out as well because very late in that game against the Rams on Monday night, James Conner has an ankle injury and DeAndre Hopkins has a leg injury, and both of them were scheduled to go for MRIs. So let's keep an eye on their status because those 2 guys have been, Conner especially. Conner, Ross, I will eat the biggest L I have ever eaten on James Conner because I didn't draft him anywhere. I did not think he would. Not only did I not think his role would be this well or that he'd hold up, I didn't think he had this explosiveness in him. But now he's hurt. Chase Edmonds might be back, so keep an eye on that. If Conner goes, you have to play him. I mean, he's carrying your lineup right now. DeAndre Hopkins, how much of that game did you watch on Monday night, Ross?
A lot of it.
Did he look to lack some explosiveness to you?
Yeah, I didn't. Well, I think he often lacks explosiveness.
That's the thing. It's like he isn't explosive anyway in the way you would, certainly not in the way you'd call Tyreek Hill explosive, but like even in the way like maybe you'd call like CeeDee Lamb explosive. Like I don't think he's that guy. Like he's a contested catch, physical guy. So if any of that explosiveness that he lacks anyway is drained out of him, I mean, he kind of looked like a guy out there. And now he's got another injury. That's a little worrisome for me because, Kyler didn't play particularly well in that game against the Rams. So I'm a little, but all that said, they're playing the Lions this week. Kyler did throw for 383 and ran for 61. He just threw a couple of bad picks, but I think AJ Green is a nice option this week. Zach Ertz is certainly somebody who's start worthy at tight end. And you're starting Kyler. I mean, even though I didn't think he played great, he put up big numbers. So just keep an eye on the status of Connor and Hopkins. Hopkins is concerning to me after what I saw in that game, especially since he picked up another injury.
What about for the Lions, Joe?
Yeah, they're starting to get some receivers going. It seems like they have a 3-man receiver rotation that's working for them. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot, Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond on the perimeter. I just don't think this is a great matchup for them. So, I mean, those guys, you're talking wide receiver 3s at best. Keep an eye on the backfield. Ikwe Bike basically fumbled twice. He lost one and then had a second one that they determined he was out of bounds before he fumbled. So I don't think he's going to get a ton of work if DeAndre Swift can't go. Dan Campbell said he was optimistic DeAndre Swift could play. But it looks like PSAC, baby. Craig Reynolds, their lead back. I told some regalia, Ross, on the radio this week about my beer drinking adventures at PSAC schools. But Kutztown University. And obviously, Ross, you know.
He looked good. He's an NFL running back.
Yeah, and they've been able to run the ball all year, by the way. So credit to their offensive line, credit to their coaching staff. Ross, you know which NFL Hall of Famer went to Kutztown University.
Of course, Andre Reed. I live near Kutztown, dude. I grew up near Kutztown.
Oh, they do. They know how to do some beer drinking at Kutztown University, Ross. I will guarantee you that. But Craig Reynolds knew how to do some running at Kutztown University. He has looked pretty good. We always, those PSAC guys, they get in the NFL and they show out. Brent Grimes went to Shippensburg. I think John Kuhn went to Shippensburg. So we get those guys in the NFL. Did you know, Ross, that the Lions have the lesser Zylstra brother?
I saw that last week.
The lesser Zylstra brother. He's a tight end. He had 6 targets in that game with TJ Hawkinson out. Their tight ends combined for 11 targets. We'll keep an eye on Hawkinson's status, but really right now the Lions are a team. Amon-Ra St. Brown is probably their best option as a receiver because Jared Goff peppers them with targets. I think Reynolds, if DeAndre Swift or Jamal Williams doesn't play, is their best option at running back.
Last but not least, we have got the Carolina Panthers at the Buffalo Bills, home of the Bacardi Performance of the Week. It is the DraftKings Performance of the Week presented by Bacardi Spiced Rum. It goes to Josh Allen. I thought they might give it to George Kittle. Josh Allen deserves it. 36 of 54, 308 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Then he ran 12 times for 109 yards and a touchdown, 42.22 points. I like this choice because they could have gone with Kittle. I think Kittle got it last week, so change it up a little bit. Give Josh Allen a little Bacardi Spiced Rum, DraftKings Performance of the Week. He was awesome, Joe. I don't know why they didn't do design quarterback runs against the Patriots, and they save them all for the Bucs.
Yeah, so, but of course, unfortunately, Josh Allen picks up a turf toe injury, and I mean, I think he's going to play this week, but maybe that's why. I mean, he ends up getting hurt. Ross, do you know how many quarterbacks all time have had 50 pass attempts and 10 rushes in a game?
Not many.
4. Josh Allen was the 4th. He was their entire offense. And Ross, this is not sustainable. We have mentioned multiple times on this podcast this season how the ability to punch your opponent in the mouth, take some pressure off your quarterback. Brandon Staley mentioned it. It is so important. And there is a perfect example. Josh Allen dropping back over 60 times and running the ball 12 times is not a sustainable. And I mean, look, if anybody can do it in the NFL, it's him, but it's not a sustainable method of play. Ross, they didn't even hand the ball off until the second half. And their first handoff was to Matt Breida on a fake punt. This team, we couldn't run the ball. We didn't try to run the ball. We didn't do diddly poo offensive. They could not run at all. They cannot run at all. I mean, it is an embarrassment right now. Keep an eye on the status of Josh Allen. Sean McDermott is talking right now. He says we're going to take it day by day we're going to take it day by day with Josh Allen. So let's just keep an eye on it. By the way, Nick Sirianni just said Jalen Hurts is trending upward, but will split reps with Gardner Minshew. So I know we talked about that earlier. So we'll no real decision yet at the Eagles quarterback position. So let's just keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the status of Josh Allen. Cole Beasley started to emerge there a little bit. And with Emmanuel Sanders picking up a knee injury, Gabriel Davis has been a guy who's kind of made plays here for them whenever he's gotten an opportunity. He could be in the wide receiver 3 mix for Buffalo.
Ooh, all right. I like that. What about Carolina with the 2-headed quarterback monster?
Oh, boy. Here's the problem, because if they get down into the red zone, Cam is going to be the option, which I think is a huge blow to Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard's a guy, man. Like, he's just a guy. Like, he had a 17-yard touchdown run, but other than that, he had 9 carries for 16 yards against Atlanta. Not exactly the most fearsome defense on planet Earth. So Chuba Hubbard's like a flex option for me. Keep an eye on DJ Moore. He's got a hamstring injury. And apparently one of the reasons, Adam Kaplan came out with this, one of the reasons that they fired Joe Brady was they didn't think he did a good job getting the ball to Robbie Anderson. Well, how about Robbie Anderson? 12 targets, 7 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. If DJ Moore doesn't go, Robbie Anderson's going to be very important to that pass attack. I just don't think this is a particularly good matchup for the Carolina Panthers.
Tend to agree, Joe. Tend to agree. Love episode 1, but I still have plenty of questions and games to get to in episode 2. It'll drop in your podcast app shortly after midnight Pacific time. We are getting you guys ready for week 15 in the NFL. He's at FG_Dolan. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. We are at Ross Tucker Pod. You can always watch and see Joe's awesome hats at youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. Episode 2 coming at you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Feast podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, Business of Sports, and the College Draft. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.
A lot of times on the show, I mentioned DraftKings. Here's what you need to know. You got to be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. By the way, if what I was talking about included a deposit bonus, doesn't always, sometimes it does. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough, and deposit bonuses are paid out in site credit.